Monday Morning Matters.
Perspectives
from Southeast Asia.
Hey, this is Arlene and you're listening to Durian ASEAN. Together with me are 4 young advocates for refugees, in particular the Rohingya community in Malaysia. We have Ashraff Rahman, a humanitarian worker, Luqman Sheikh Ghazali, a film documentary maker, and we have Regine Guevara, youth leader and entrepreneur, as well as Ashraful Mobin, microfinance and business advocate. First of all, welcome to the studio and thank you for being here.
Thank you for having us.
Hi. Well, I share with the audience about your background. Perhaps you can share more about what you are currently doing and more about your work in terms of helping the refugee. We can start with you first.
Me? Okay, I'm a humanitarian worker. I was in the corporate line before, and then I quit my job 5 years ago. And then now I'm very much involved with the refugees community in Malaysia and also internationally, because I'm basically trained for war zones and conflict area. Mm-hmm. So in Malaysia, I've been helping them with education, health, livelihood, and other areas actually to just get them going.
Very interesting. And the same with you too, right?
I'm mostly working on research how we can help these refugees, especially the Rohingya refugees or all refugees, to upgrade their livelihood, the financing, because financing does matter to make them entrepreneurs or to skill development. How this financing can come to these refugees through innovative ways. So on this issue, I'm doing research and implementation also. That's all about this.
Mm-hmm. And you're a filmmaker and you did something interesting on the Rohingya.
Okay. So I'm actually a student filmmaker from MMU Johor. There is a film program down there. It's called the Cinematic Arts Program. So we learn everything from script writing all the way until editing and production, all that. One of the projects that we had to do was a documentary. So I wanted to choose something which was very close to my heart, which was the refugee crisis in Myanmar. The video is actually online. It's a Malay title. It's called Mencari Teduh, or you can search for the English title, which is called Seeking Shade. It's on my channel, Luqman LSG, Luqman LSG, and it's there where I have shared a lot of my work, and I've collaborated with a lot of other people, and you can see my work there. So currently I'm working on my next short film, which is a short film family comedy. It's called Nenek, which in Malay translates to grandmother. So you can check out our updates on Facebook, Nenek Short Film, NENEK Short Film on Facebook.
And you also, Regine, you have been working with young people quite a while. But what about the refugees? What's your involvement with them?
Hi, so I'm from the World Humanitarian Summit and I focus on youth development and policy making. But with regards to young refugees, it's the same. Like we try to build their leadership and boost their morale so that they can get some hope and set up their own career plan. I'm also into a lot of interfaith community work, because I think that it should be the pressure should be from the bottom and also from the top. So with regards to the community at the bottom, like we do a lot of interfaith youth exchanges so that young Buddhists and young Muslims in Myanmar can understand each other better.
You guys are coming from very diverse background, doing very interesting work with the refugees, especially the Rohingya refugees. A general question I want to ask to everyone: what prompted you to be a youth advocate for refugees, especially in Malaysia?
There are 154,000 refugees in Malaysia, and then until now we don't really have a concrete solutions on this. And then even as an individual, actually, I was thinking, if no one is really doing anything about this, so when it's going to be solved? So as I think it's somehow I think become my responsibility as an individual.
So you feel the urgency of
Yes,
the
the
issue.
urgency of the issue, because if not now, then when? Then when is it going to be solved? A lot of things going on in our life. For example, like average, the lifespan of us is just maybe about 60 years. So we are wasting that years already. Just imagine if you are them. Actually, you are not doing things properly. You don't have a proper living. What about your future and everything? So by thinking about that, I feel the urge of doing something for them, because they are just like us too, a human being, and then they don't choose to be like this actually.
So you work with UNHCR and you were stationed in Rakhine State at one point in your career to work with the refugee. Just to give a bit of perspective on the refugees in Malaysia, how many of them are they? And are they living amongst us?
Okay, first of all, the one based in Rakhine and also Yangon in Myanmar is actually with Malaysian Relief Agency. I was the country manager of Myanmar with that NGO. With UNHCR, I was working in Malaysia for 2 missions in 1 year. The first one is doing registration. We move from one city to another city in Peninsular Malaysia to register refugees, and then basically to interview them if they are eligible for refugee status and everything. Then only we register them. At that time, during 6 months, we managed to register, I think, about over 20,000 refugees altogether. That's basically a lot for just 6 months, and we basically refused to register a lot of other people too, because we don't have the capacity at that time. Generally, in Malaysia, and the other thing that I was working the next 6 months was on detention camp and prison, basically. My assignment was to go to detention camp and prisons to conduct interview to possible refugees and asylum seekers, to basically, if they are eligible for refugee status, we will register them, and then we work with the government of Malaysia to basically release them from the detention and prison in the name of humanity. So in Malaysia, there's about 154,000 refugees. 95% are from Myanmar, in average, and about, I think it's maybe at this time around 50,000 Rohingya. The rest are Myanmar Chin, and only 5% are the minorities like the Afghani, Pakistan, Iraq, Iran, and everything else.
So there's a huge urgency in terms of addressing the matter when you have more than 1,000 population of Malaysia coming from the refugee.
Yes.
What about you?
Well, actually, I'm originally from Bangladesh, so I met many of them back home.
Have you been in Malaysia for quite a while?
Yeah, for 2 years I'm here actually. I did my master's here before. Now I'm doing my PhD here. So what actually happened? I met many people there, especially Rohingya refugees in Bangladesh. There are shelter centers, but they are leading very miserable life. It's ridiculous, to be very honest. And after that, my subject is finance. What I feel many NGOs, humanitarian workers, giving them aids to support their daily livings, but it's not it's just not a permanent solution. It's just temporary solutions, because it's all these aids for consumptions, not giving them business opportunities or to support them. So as a finance students, what I wanted to do when I come to Malaysia, I took subject Islamic finance. I look into these, what the solution can be to find out permanent way of get rid of these problems, and that prompt me to work for them. And when it's come to later, we can discuss in details what the permanent solution can be and how we can upgrade the livelihood. Okay.
That's very interesting. And one of your work is to create micro entrepreneurs.
Exactly. What I'm doing now, as part of my PhD, I'm working like how the microfinance can be used to like support these micro entrepreneurs, and especially the micro entrepreneur for the refugees. That's the idea.
We'll go back to the micro entrepreneurs later on in the interview. Let's move on to our other two youth advocates here. So, Luqman.
Yeah, I would just like to echo what Ashraful said earlier, the fact that we don't have a lot of coverage or awareness about the whole issue in Myanmar right now. I felt that it was also my responsibility, because these are not only our Muslim brothers and sisters, but these are also, our neighbors.
But
they're
why
so
there's
close by.
very little awareness?
I feel that the media coverage has been really, really low, because it doesn't necessarily have like a clear enemy, I think, because if you compare with other refugees, you know, who live, if you compare with other countries such as so like Syria or Palestine, lots of people are like very unified in, like, you know, in our opinion. But like the Myanmar crisis right now, it doesn't necessarily have like a clear answer, because we are like really close neighbors with the government there. So.
And also, interestingly, when it comes to the plight of the Muslim refugee from Myanmar, what I'm seeing right now is the rise of religious nationalism. In the case of Myanmar, would be the rise of Buddhist nationalism. Of course, religion can be used in many ways, for good or for bad purposes. In the case of your work, you actually document the plight of this one Muslim and also Rohingya Myanmar, his way from coming from his hometown in Rakhine State, if I'm not mistaken,
yes,
all
right.
the way to Malaysia.
Yep.
What kind of discrimination that he faced along the way?
His entire journey from Myanmar all the way until Malaysia has been like one entire tragic story, really, because he had to flee from his village when he was just a child, and because his village was attacked, and he had to go through, he had to walk through the jungle, he had to take some boats, he had to ride on some buses as well. So it actually took him a few months just to reach all the way until Malaysia. So the types of discrimination, I would say that the Rohingyas tend to actually look a bit more like Bangladeshis or other South Asian nationals. So they tend to not get as much attention, or they tend to have like very negative connotations, especially in the public eye. So really, it becomes a sort of like a barrier that's caused, you know, just by their physical features for people to reach out to them. But specifically in my case, in the case of my subject matter for the documentary, his name is Mr. Nur Alam. He was mostly helped by Malay Muslims up in the north around the Terengganu state, and it was through their kindness that he was able to get a home and continue a livelihood there.
But let's move on to Regine. What prompted you to focus on these refugee issues?
Well, it's the same pretty much with what Luqman said, like how helpless the situation really is. You know what I mean? Like, the Rohingyas, they're refugees, but it's not as simple as that. They're stateless, they don't have the basic services, but also they don't have voice, like not even as much as other refugees have, because of media censorship, discrimination, racism, and many other things. So personally, like, I discovered this through quite a very personal story. When I was in college, I joined ISEC for my internship, and I chose this refugee school in Malaysia because my course was development studies, and the refugee situation seemed really interesting. But I didn't know what Rohingyas were. I didn't know that Malaysia was a Muslim country. I didn't know that Rohingyas were Muslims. And then, like, when I immersed myself with this community for a long time, I really got close to the Rohingya children, and then it was a very, very painful process when I saw how limited their future would be, and how, like, the whole situation is like a cycle. So as children, they don't have what they need, and they went through all these stress, and then when they grow up, many of them end up doing crimes, or helplessly not getting jobs, or if they do, then they get abused by their employers. Then the same thing happens over and over with their children, next generation.
So for these refugee kids, they are not recognized as refugees, and they don't have any education opportunity, and that means their whole existence is very limited in terms of livelihood, in terms of life, and in general. We will take a short break. When we return, we'll discuss further on the challenges and plights all these refugees, especially Rohingya refugees, face in Malaysia, and also their own country of origin.
Monday Morning Matters.
Perspectives
From Southeast Asia.
Hey, this is Arlene. You're back with me again on Durian ASEAN. And with me, of course, is the 4 young advocates who are working hard to highlight the plights of the refugees, in particular Rohingya in Malaysia and their country of origin. And with me is Ashraff, Rahman, working in humanitarian work, and Luqman Sheikh Ghazali, working in film documentary, Regine, Guevara, a young leader and entrepreneur, as well as Ashraful Mobin, working in microfinance and business with the Rohingya community. So early on, you guys share a lot about your background, what you have done so far in trying to highlight the plights of the refugees here. But in terms of the challenges that they face, especially in Malaysia, perhaps you guys can go a bit more detail and what are the things that they face as refugees here. We can go with you. A lot of your time you spend with the refugee communities, especially the Rohingya. What are their current plights right now?
Okay, before that, maybe I can just give an overview of what happened before. I think in 2012, 28 May, if I'm not mistaken, a Buddhist girl, a Rakhine Buddhist girl, was raped. It said was raped by a Rohingya guys, actually.
This is what sparked the
whole conflict
of the Rohingya.
the whole crisis. So after that, the Rohingya man was being somehow revenged by the Rakhine people, and then after that it goes the other way around. They take revenge again, and that's how everything started. So they started to kill each other and burn houses and everything.
The Burmese government at that time didn't do anything to stop it, or did they?
They didn't really do anything. There has been reported they were present at that time. But they did not do anything. They did not intervene into the whole conflict situation. And also by the latest Al Jazeera video, if you have watched the genocide investigation, it is said that the government is involved in this, the Myanmar government actually.
But why only now? I mean, they have been living here for centuries.
Okay.
Even during the military regime itself, before 2011, I mean, they weren't such a big deal when it comes to the Rohingya problem.
Okay, the conflict between them actually started more than 40 years ago already, but that rape case was actually the trigger of everything. So that's where everything started, the conflict, the killing, the house burning and everything. But by evidence also, by some bodies, there are no rape evidence to the girl. So we don't know actually which is the truth right now.
So until now we don't know who actually is the culprit.
Yes, we don't know. But by the Al Jazeera video, the latest one, on genocide Myanmar, so it is said the government is involved. There are many evidence actually being laid out to the public and also to some legal bodies to investigate on this. And then until now, there are about 500,000 Rohingya refugees have fled Myanmar to neighboring countries,
and this is the
especially Malaysia.
biggest wave of Rohingya refugee to Malaysia, I suppose.
You can say that as well, because in Malaysia there's a lot, because they feel safe here. Malaysia is safer, and also it's a Muslim country, so there's a similarity to that actually, just on the religion part.
Religion also played a huge role, especially religious Buddhist monk, in terms of trying to fan the issue into a religious hatred sentiment towards the towards the Rohingya people. How deep it has been.
Okay, in Myanmar, there's one, the main monk, they said Wiratu, his name is Wiratu. He's actually the main monk that is preaching all of the hatred to the Muslim in public. Actually, he did that in public. It was everywhere on YouTube. So basically, he somehow recruit all the other monks from the Saffron's movement, the other time, to be with him. And then, based on also the Al Jazeera video, it is said it is the government's involvement actually to basically do this systematically. So they are trying to make this seen as a religion conflict, but it's actually ethnic cleansing. by the evidence. Yeah.
Is there a reason why they want to create this ethnic cleansing? I mean, it's just a group of people, community who have been there. I mean, they don't have any threats if you are talking about like if you are comparing to other ethnic groups in Myanmar where they have real ethnic conflicts happening.
Well, it is very unclear actually why they are doing this in the first place, but overall, it is seen actually they just try to get rid all the Muslims in the country because from what the Wiratu and other monks are also preaching, they are somehow afraid of the Islamization in the country. So they think that all these Islamic people, the Muslims, are actually trying to take over the country. They were saying that it will start with the Rakhine state, so they will basically Islamize the state, and also they would try to Islamize the country. So that's basically their fear. And the Rakhine people and other Buddhists as well, they are trying to fight against this. They are afraid of that.
What are the other means that the Rohingya refugees do besides going through the boat channel to countries like Thailand and Malaysia? Escaping from there.
Most of them, usually they will take boats from Myanmar to Bangladesh first, and then from Bangladesh they will move to Thailand. And then through Thailand they will go by land. They will go through all the hills and mountains and jungles and everything through the border of Malaysia, and then get in illegally. Most of them. That's the basically number one method that they are using now. The boats arrival are just happened because the authority of Malaysia found the camps, the tracks that they are being using in the border of Malaysia and Thailand. So the human traffickers basically, the agents are not using that method anymore, that route anymore. So they moved to the boats. That's why we found the boat and the arrival and everything.
And your subject, when you did the filmmaking, did he went through the route where he had to deal with the human traffickers?
In terms of whether or not he had to deal with human traffickers, I'm not entirely sure about that. But when he was going through borders between Myanmar and Thailand and Malaysia, the biggest fear for him and his entire group was actually the border patrol. He actually said that he would prefer to stay in not stay in Myanmar, but he was really afraid of like the Thailand border patrol because they are actually much more strict as compared to the Malaysian border patrol.
There's such an irony.
Yeah, so it's actually a little funny, but the group that he went with had to travel for a few months through jungles and through boats and such. So they had to try and like find a route that had to avoid a lot of the border patrols, especially along the Thailand area.
Interesting. So Malaysian jungle is being used as the map for them to come here.
Yeah, one of the routes. One of the routes.
Yeah. And when they reach here, usually how would they connect with the community in Malaysia?
Through the agents usually.
So they already connected when they were in Rakhine.
Okay, when they are in Myanmar, they are the most common cases that we heard out. There are actually two cases. One, they are being tricked to go out of Myanmar by the agents. They are paying the agents, and then they go out of Myanmar. They will promise along the way food and security and everything, and including jobs in Malaysia, as well as seeing their family again. But the reality is they have to pay the money there, and then when they come to Malaysia they will be detained still here until their family members in Malaysia pay some amount of money to release them. Yeah. So the other one is also based on the recent evidence saying that the government by the military is forcing them to go out of Myanmar. They just approach some villages and then maybe about 100 of them, force them to get into the boat and tow the boat out to the sea, and then just let that go. And then they will just basically warn them too that if you come back, we will kill you. So they have no choice; they will just move. And then when between these movements, basically there are agents. There are usually 2 or 3 agents. One in Myanmar, the other one in the transit area, and the other one in Malaysia. So when they come here, the agents basically will contact their family, maybe, and then the family will have to pay the agent in order for them to be released and reunited in Malaysia. So that's most the common cases.
And a lot of them, when they reach here, let's say they manage to settle down and try to find their way in with a not so perfect but good enough community, but they need to earn a livelihood. And you work in the microfinance and business area, and you are working closely with this refugee. How do they sustain themselves usually?
Well, the challenge here is that most of the cases they try to look the refugees as a burden, like they are getting more employment, and so the opportunities for the local is being lesser. So idea is that if we just think the different perspective, how this burden can be converted to the assets, because these refugees, their education level is very low, and they don't have the enough skills to go for the entrepreneurship or to sell their labors. So the idea is that they find it very much difficult actually, because they don't have the legal status to work here. So they're also afraid of the police on these enforcement forces. So this is the problem here. They face problems. So they go for the very, very low paid works, and in many cases they are not treated very well by the employers actually here. So it's a scenario, and they have some.
And the reason why they are not being treated very well is because it's a vicious cycle when there's
Exactly.
no law being regulated.
One issue is law, another issue is the education, another issue that they don't have enough skills. So they just go for 3D dangerous, dirty works. But even for that, they are not protected by the laws. That's another issue actually. Yeah, you can call it a vicious cycle.
But you are actually training them to be entrepreneurs, but with such limited opportunities and them not being recognized as refugees and not being allowed to work. How do you deal with that? How do you?
Well, the idea is that here we have the problems with the regulations, but just keep the regulations as it is. Still, we have some rooms to work with them, right? Well, if the refugees they know how to do some graphic designing, soft skills, or all other things, so they don't have to find the market in the Malaysia. They can also find the market in the online basis from the UK, US. They have the employers, right? So they can just sell their labors, like this soft skills, or in these computer skills. But it's a challenge because they don't have the basic level of education. But at first we need to provide them the basic level that goes with their spirituality, because just being a Muslim or look like Bangladeshi, they are being treated badly in Malaysia, in Myanmar. So for that they are here, so they are very much sensitive about their feelings. So if we just think from different perspective, how their feelings, their skills, all these things we can just put in a package that can just make them a better entrepreneur. I mean, I call it micro entrepreneur actually. So that can solve many issues actually.
And Regine, and some of their kids, right? Of course, they need education, and there's a lot of refugee education or refugee schools in Malaysia, but most of them cater to different segment of the refugee communities, and you work with one of them. What kind of challenges that you find with these kids?
Well, the kids that I worked with are quite lucky actually, because they study in a UNHCR school, but sadly not all Rohingya children go through UNHCR education, and the UNHCR education is very basic. Math, English, that's basically it. But when I was there, and which is why I started this project or movement with other fellow young volunteers, we realized that basic education is not enough, and it's not also just about skills, but also as kids growing up, they still need that values formation component, like leadership training, something that's not as tangible. Because while as they grow up and then they see all these things happening, they went through that route from Myanmar to Malaysia. Some of them grew up here, but while they're already here, you have that whole society that doesn't accept them, and a future that is unsure. So, I think one of the things that young people can contribute is just presence, give moral support and hope, and try to talk to them about what are the potential steps they can take in the future, because it's not as hopeless hopefully as it seems, because there are pathways like what Ashraf was saying, entrepreneurship part.
We'll take another short break. When we return, we'll discuss further on the solution to address the problem of refugee, at least in the Malaysian context.
Monday Morning Matters
Perspectives
from Southeast Asia.
Hi, this is Arlene. You're back again with me on the conversation about refugees in Malaysia, in particular the Rohingya refugees, with 4 very interesting young advocates. One, we have Ashraf, Rahman, Luqman, Sheikh Ghazali, Regine, Guevara, and Ashraful, Mobin. So we discussed a lot on the plights that they face in different aspects: education, livelihood, their journey from Myanmar or from their country of origin to Malaysia, and also the plight that they face in their country of origin. Moving forward, a lot of initiatives that you guys are doing are great, but what do you think when it comes to the government and the civil society? Have they done enough to address the issue?
Yeah, so I've done media coverage for many of the NGOs here in Malaysia. Some of them that work directly with refugees, such as Carefugees, Muslim Professionals Forum, and Piecemeal as well. They have many programs which try and help the refugee situation here. And a lot of the people, they're like the same people working among other organizations, and they're really passionate. But I think among the biggest problems that they have in trying to assist the refugees here are, first off, is lack of budget, because they're not able to help as many people as they would, trying to raise funds.
And a lot of their money comes from foreign donors, I suppose?
Yeah, actually that's true. I think a lot from Australia, if I'm not mistaken, Australia and other countries. Also, they also have a lack of work power, because from the number of volunteers that they have, since they're volunteers, they can't actually maintain like a permanent position, because everybody has their own careers to juggle, and they have their other responsibilities as well. So the outreach really is limited by the number of people.
So what you're saying is we need to multiply as many young ACR as possible.
Definitely.
Right now we only have one.
Yep. And the next thing is really the biggest thing, I feel, is the scope of their organization, because as much as they would love to, because I've worked with these people, they're really passionate people, and they really want to help as many refugees as they can. They also have to deal with the fact that as an NGO, they're not able to help refugees, completely, as in terms of covering their education, covering their economic stability, covering their health as well.
So if you are looking at civil society, their role is more like a third level support. It's in like they support the government, they support regional organization, but they are not supposed to be seen as the one moving the issue, because the issue is very complex and is related to relationship between other countries as well.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And talking about other countries, of course, we are looking at ASEAN here. When it comes to refugee issue, ASEAN seems to be not as vocal as when you talk about trade and economy. Regine, do you think the government regional governments has not really play a significant role on this, and why?
I think they should, because I've been talking about movements on the ground, peace building, youth development, human development, but there should be, like I said, also work from the top. So there should be policy level solutions. However, I think that studying and working with ASEAN for a while now, I think that probably ASEAN is not the proper platform for that. Like last night, I was reading this article that says ASEAN is a cow, don't try to make it a horse. So ASEAN is really supposed to work slowly. Perhaps its mechanisms are supposed to work slowly. There's that whole non-intervention clause that won't change for the next generation. Hopefully it will, but then there's so much time wasted by civil society focusing on ASEAN, but perhaps it's not ASEAN that we should be pressuring right now. I mean, of course, like eventually it should develop, but for me, I think the OIC should play a stronger role, because the whole issue is quite connected to a lot of things that the OIC does. Like, of course, the OIC has been sending aid to the Rohingya refugees, and you've got Saudi Arabia hosting the most number of Rohingya refugees, actually, right?
Interesting.
Ashraf? The most number of Rohingya refugees are in Saudi Arabia.
Outside of Southeast Asia, or in
the whole wide
in
world?
the whole wide world.
And they are not being considered as refugees. They have the basic right, the same as any other people in Saudi.
So there are
that is
these,
very interesting.
So there are these aid that they try to do, but then in terms of policy, Myanmar could care less about OIC. That's what a Rohingya youth leader told me. But there's China, Russia, and the US backing Myanmar up. And if only OIC was strong enough to speak up, then perhaps they could do something stronger about the situation. Because like what Ashraf was saying a while ago, the whole Buddhist monk fundamentalism, it's also related to Islamic extremism. I was talking to this.
So it's a reactionary by other
Exactly.
religions towards
There is
Islamic.
a real fear from Buddhist monks that Islamic extremism will rise. So I think that the Muslim countries should realize that what they're doing in the Middle East is affecting Muslims in this region.
Very interesting. And there's a lot of interfaith efforts that you have been doing as well to address this as a young advocate.
Yes, that's true, because we realize that maybe if in the future, even if we do solve these problems on a policy level, at the end of the day, the people will still be hating on each other. You know, even if, let's say, inshallah, like the Rohingyas are accepted in Myanmar or wherever else in the region, there's still that angst, that hate among people. So, and also vice versa, like that would never happen if the people themselves don't want to accept the Rohingyas. So that's what me and my friends in Myanmar are trying to do, like try to build friendships and interfaith understanding between the Buddhists and Muslims.
And talking about countries, of course you mentioned that Saudi Arabia has done a lot, but we often forget about Bangladesh. And Bangladesh recently has been receiving a lot of negative press when it comes to addressing the Rohingya issue. Why this is happening? And what's the reality on the ground?
Issues related to Rohingya is political and related to economy actually. When you talk about the Bangladesh, recently Bangladesh Prime Minister said something and it's been very much highlighted in the international media, but we should not forget what Bangladesh is doing for the Rohingya for many ages. In Bangladesh we have many shelter centers. They are serving Rohingyas, and Bangladesh people consider them as part of them for many sense. But the problem is that if we just look from the Myanmar perspective, they want the Rohingya people to leave their country. And at that time, if Bangladesh open their border, they will come into the Bangladesh, and Myanmar will, what they want, that will be served. And in that perspective, Bangladesh government tell them we should raise the issue in the international channels like UN, ASEAN. So they will give the pressure to the Myanmar, and they must have to keep their people in their land. And because everyone wants to leave their own land, motherland, that's the perspective from Bangladesh actually.
So what Bangladesh is doing is for the long term in terms of addressing the ethnic conflict within Myanmar, rather than them being the solution for the Rohingya. But the reality is they have to deal it in their own homeland when it comes to their own ethnic cleansing problem.
Because everyone wants to leave their own homeland, right? Because they have the rights there, they have the families there, many memories there. So definitely they want to go back there.
And when it comes to Malaysian government, of course the most infamous issue was the boat people crisis happening a couple of months ago. But the issue has somehow show Malaysia not willing to create space for the Rohingya people. And you working in the UNHCR, I'm sure you work with the Malaysian government as well. How well the intention of the Malaysian government to address this?
Okay. In this case, there are many different perspectives actually, because I've worked with several humanitarian volunteering movements. the local NGO of Malaysia, international NGO, and also with UN before. Currently, I'm attached with Al Khair Foundation from UK, doing programs for the refugees, basically. So, if we look at the capacity and the capacity of doing work towards the refugee is all different, actually, including the government. A lot of people don't know, actually, the Malaysian government is contributing and helping the refugees in Malaysia and also in Myanmar. I can't mention which agency and which the amount and everything, but they contribute some amount of money actually for us, actually, NGOs to do work in Myanmar, helping the refugees over there. In Malaysia, there are also initiatives on helping that, but on different capacity.
But Malaysia is caught in a catch-22 situation. Like, if you help the refugee, if you recognize the refugee, I mean, the government's argument would be like, everyone will want to come to Malaysia because we are a strategic nation. I mean, we are stable, peaceful, and of course majority of the population are Muslim. So a lot of migrants, either economic migrants or even refugees, would want to come to here, either as a stopping point for another country, or to settle here. But then, if Malaysia do not allow this refugee to come in and settle here, then it's being seen that Malaysian government do not see human rights as a major concern. So how can Malaysia actually go about this issue and address it effectively?
Okay, this is maybe one of the reason. Avoiding the influx of refugees coming into Malaysia is also one of the reason why Malaysia did not sign the 1951 United Nations Convention related to refugees and the 1967 Protocol. It is also similar with cases with the Bangladesh. If we always accept it, we are not solving the root of the problem. The root of the problem right now is in Myanmar. So by accepting refugees, we are somehow encouraging refugees to go out of Myanmar when they know it is safe in Malaysia. Yes, it is a human rights issue that we should be accepting them, but in a way, by not accepting them, and it will give a bigger pressure to Myanmar actually to do something about it, about the problems that they are facing in Myanmar itself, in the country. Because if we look at the overall overview of all of the issues here, it's not there's no really real solution to it unless the government of Myanmar itself solving the problems. Yeah.
So I guess the answer to this question would be to raise as much awareness as possible as in what is happening there in Myanmar.
Yep.
And not just in terms of government to government, but also the community, especially in Malaysia. I think a lot of people are still not aware the level of crisis that would happen in the future if they continue with the ethnic cleansing.
Yes, actually true. Even on individual basis, whatever that stories that we know, the news that we heard about the real issues, whatever that we are involved with the refugees, the work that we have done, just tell as much people as possible that other people are aware of it, other people get involved to it, and then in the end it will create a ripple effects towards a bigger organization, a bigger movements, and then in the end from maybe country to country and international pressure to Myanmar again. Yeah.
So finally, my last question to everyone, briefly. What do you think the future would hold for the Rohingya refugee, and what can we do about it as Malaysians or as people in Southeast Asia in general?
Well, as a filmmaker, I think that it is the most important. It is the most imperative that people are aware about this, about the situation there. I would like to echo what Ashraful had said, that really it comes down to the awareness of the people and how much they are willing to help. I based my documentary on that, actually, the fact that a lot of these cases go unreported and uncovered by the media. So I think the most important, apart from spreading awareness, is also helping the NGOs here on the ground here in Malaysia, who are doing the best that they can to provide economic and health and educational support to the refugees here. But in terms of solving the problem with Myanmar and other countries with conflict as well, that I think we have to live up to our politicians in office.
Regine?
I think that the young people, the next generation, have a big stake in this because, like, there are already all these structural problems, and the next generation has a stake in creating change, like what we usually say. So it's up to us to channel our own talents and passions to contribute to social change in general, and of course the refugees, who are one of the most vulnerable people on the planet. Like Luqman is a filmmaker, and he used that to raise awareness on refugees, and Ashraff is an entrepreneur, and Ashraful is a humanitarian worker. I'm into interfaith work. So yes, I encourage young people around ASEAN to volunteer, and please like our Facebook page, Committee for ASEAN Youth Volunteers, if you want to keep posted on what we're trying to do for the Rohingya refugees in terms of peer-to-peer approach, leadership training, and if you want to volunteer as teachers, that would be really nice.
Well, the idea is that there are actually two issues. One is the Rohingyas who are already staying in Rohingya, that their own land, or other people who are already in Malaysia and other countries. The people who are in Myanmar, they are their own land. We should ensure that they don't leave their land anymore by political and other pressure, this political job. But from my perspective, what we can do, we can just, we should think from different perspective. We should not just look and they are burden to the country. They can be the assets. How? Like, if these people contributing to the Malaysian GDP, not just getting one portion of the labors, but just like the people, other things, the Malaysian, they don't want to do, they are doing those kind of stuff. The Malaysian, they don't have that skill, they have that skills. If we can develop that way, definitely I think it will be good for the Malaysian government and Malaysians too. Like, in another perspective, if I'm from Islamic finance background, so I know that Islamic finance has some certain tools that's very much perfect to cater the need of these Rohingyas, because they are also Muslims. They prefer something that's in line with their sentiments and feelings. Like, in the Islamic finance we have zakat and waqf that we cannot use for the people in the corporate life. It must go for the vulnerable people in the under the poverty line. So these things we can use for the refugee people. That day, the Sultan of Perak was saying that the selling of ice cream in 1 year in the Malaysia is enough to support the refugees. Like, if you just think from the different perspective, people for people, like 10 young people in the Malaysia, they get together just to help 2 refugees. Like, they arrange, they just raise fund 500 each, 5,000. By the 5,000 ringgit, they can train one refugee who is a key person in one family, and they can help himself to just establish a micro enterprise. And this way, one family can stand up, and we can go together without bothering the government and legal regulations. Everything, still people for people, young people for young people. We can just solve this issue.
So grassroots advocacy.
Yeah.
And you, finally?
Okay, we are all Generation Y. Yes, I'm still young. We are all Generation Y. We are creative, and all of us have different skill sets and everything. So I think we should take one thing that we are really good at. Like, for example, Luqman, he's good in filmmaking. Do that. Use that skill towards contributing to the community, whichever community that needs help. In this case, refugees. So if you're good at painting, for example, teach the children painting. So any skills that they could have is actually valuable, because most of the time they don't have that opportunity, and that opportunity is actually will enable them to stand up for themselves. Not painting in particular, for example, but in a way they will give them self-confidence. For example, if you're good at teaching, you could go to refugee school and teach them English, teach them Malay language, so that they can stand up for themselves, they can speak up for themselves. So that's the main problem right now here. They don't have that opportunity to get more skills. So since a lot of people, especially the youth in Malaysia, have a lot of skills and they are all talented, we should all work together towards this issue, actually, to solve this issue, to help as much as possible that we can, because these are the only channel right now, if it's not official on the legal framework in Malaysia, for example, on individual basis, like they were saying just now, it's all by volunteer to volunteer basis and individual basis, right, for among each other. That's all that we need actually, because if not now, then when? If not all of us, then who?
With that, thank you very much. Thanks for coming to join us.